Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you, and today we are going to talk about my favorite compound, which is known as Primobolan, as many of you know. But before we get into that, just a big shout out and thank you to everybody supporting the channel, the likes, the subs, the comments, the shares. I cannot thank you enough. Please, if you haven't yet, do all of those things. Like, sub, share, comment, whatever you can do. It feeds the algorithm, it helps us grow, which allows me to produce more and more content for you each and every day. So, we're just going to give a big overview of my favorite compound, Primobolan. Now, I know I'm biased, but I'm going to give you facts. Nothing but facts. If there's one steroid that you could consider to be as perfect as can be, it'd have to be Primobolan, and I'm going to tell you why. Not only does it have the very best risk to benefit ratio of any steroid, but it's one of the safest and arguably one of the most effective steroids available. It depends on what you want from a steroid, all right? It would seem that everyone would want to use it, though some people just don't understand it, or they don't know how to make the best use of it, or they expect something so damn drastic. But I'm going to get into all that. Now, let's talk about some medical uses first. Now, most steroids were originally developed for some sort of medical purpose first, and then they became abused in the bodybuilding community, and so on and so forth. Primobolan is actually one of the only steroids that was actually developed just solely for bodybuilders. But it's banned by the FDA, so there's no medical uses aside from off-label, meaning that can offer a lot of significant benefits in the treatment of conditions like AIDS, for example. And I'm going to get into that so you can understand. Look, some of the top AIDS doctors in the world have begged the FDA to make Primobolan available because of the tremendous benefits that it has on the immune system. If you weren't aware of that, that's one of the big draws to Primobolan is the boosting properties for your immune system. All right? Look, when you cycle Primo, that you may notice that everyone around you will get a cold or a flu, but you will not, and that is not coincidence. All right? AIDS patients find that it's perfect to prevent muscle wasting without harsh side effects of other steroids like an Anadrol or a Tren, for example. Now let's talk about Shbg, sex hormone binding globulin. That's a protein that binds to sex steroids and it renders them inactive for as long as Shbg is bound to them. So free testosterone is what matters here. The higher you can get that relative to total testosterone, the more benefits you're going to get and can expect. And this is referred to as bound and unbound testosterone, as many of you know or have heard me talk about before. Now, Primobolan is a DHT derivative, which I've brought up in other videos, and I'm sure some of you do know that. And what that's going to do is bind to Shbg, and that's going to increase your free testosterone, which is why it works so well as part of a steroid stack instead of alone. For this reason, using Primobolan alone is going to kind of be a waste for it to get to its full potential. So you should always stack Primobolan, at least with testosterone, all right, in any cycle that you run. Now, let's talk about injectable versus oral. There's no debate here. Injectable is far superior to the oral version. It's not even close. The oral version, though, is a great option for females, which I'm going to get into. Oral Primo results are just not very good in general because it takes such a large amount of the to get anywhere. All right, the active substance is going to be destroyed by the liver. It's not a C17 alpha alkylated oral, so the doses have to be run much higher, which makes it extremely expensive for some people, and I don't recommend using it at all. I just don't. I don't see any reason whatsoever. Now, the name suggests Primo meaning first or number one. That's what Primo means, right? So, Primo's going to top the list of premier tissue building drugs. Why? Why is that, Dylan? Because it emphasizes the anabolic nature and reduces the harsher androgenic qualities. Look, Primobolan was designed to have as few side effects as possible, which it does. Okay? Suppression on Primobolan is quite minimal, and increased blood pressure, liver damage, risk of gynecomastia, they're basically non-existent. All right? Which makes it just extremely desirable. Being the most anabolic and the least androgenic of all steroids, it's so clean and it's so damn perfect for so many people. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. Running it by itself is not going to give you anything drastic. And one of the things that my problems here is people don't fully understand Primobolan. Primobolan is not going to blast out 20 pounds of size in a whole cycle, and definitely not in just a few weeks. Primo is built for people that like to see continuous, gradual gains throughout and don't expect some sort of drastic onset change, or really, it's not drastic overall. You're not going to be putting 10 pounds on with Primobolan, but if you can gain 5, 6, 7 pounds of really quality, lean, clean muscle that you can keep because you're dealing with so far less side effects and recovery so much easier, I don't personally understand how that can't be desirable in one way or another, but I do understand everybody has different wants, needs, preferences, etc. People do think it takes a long time to kick in, which is not the case. It starts working immediately, but growing solid muscle mass takes time. Just because you gain 10 pounds doesn't mean it's clean either. A lot of that with certain compounds, like a D-ball, for example, it's going to be a ton of water weight. It's everybody thinks that if you're not gaining 15, 20 pounds, that you're not doing anything, and that's just not true. In fact, gaining that amount of weight that rapidly is not good on your body in general. All right? It takes time with anything that you do, but if you want the pure muscle, you're going to grow muscles more naturally here with increased nitrogen retention just at a more accelerated rate. So because Primo works by retaining nitrogen, it's essential that you take a lot of protein in through your diet if you want to gain more muscle. Eating a subpar diet makes anything a waste. Now, a high protein diet is going to help it work at its best. All right? One side effect commonly associated with Primobolan is hair loss. If you're not prone to male pattern baldness, you're not going to have an issue. If you are, being that it's a DHT steroid, that's something to be concerned about. Now, one thing that you got to understand about Primo is its versatility. You can use it in a bulking or cutting scenario, and it's going to do extremely well just fine. I mean, theoretically, you can take any steroid that you want and bulk or cut with it. Some are just catered to that effect far more than others. Obviously, if you want to bulk, you're going to want to look at a D-ball or an Anadrol or a Superdrol or something like that far more than you ever would at Primobolan. But Primobolan definitely, like stacking it with Test, Deca, and itself, oh my gosh. It's so clean, and it helps clean up the cycle so well. You're not going to get any of these water weight gains or anything of the sort. So if you're running a bulking cycle, it's definitely beneficial, all right, for a number of reasons. It's just not going to produce a drastic increase in weight on its own. So just be aware. A lot of people are going to call it something that they use with a lean bulk. But in a calorie deficit, you're still going to be able to hold on to muscle and move forward and gain some lean muscle in the process. It's so versatile, and it's so good at preserving muscle. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, let's talk about the dosing. Everybody's all over the place with the dosing. I hate to say I'm an expert on anything. I don't like to say that. Let me just say this. I have ran Primo probably a good 8 times now. I have a ton of experience with it. I've coached thousands of people over the last decade on it. What I've found through all of this is that 400 milligrams is the minimum I would recommend, but the sweet spot is 500 to 600, and 800 is the most that I would run. And to be honest with you, you're not going to see much more added benefit going at 800. And if you are running Primo, generally, unless you have a UGL that really knows what they're doing, it's going to only come in 100 milligram per milliliter increments. So you're going to be pinning a lot of it. And it's not an easy injection in terms of pain. So there's really no need to go up to 800. 500 to 600 is the sweet spot, all right? Just understand that you can go too high on anything, and you're just wasting time and money, all right, going too high, and you're putting yourself at more risk of side effects. Now, it stacks well with anything in any scenario. One thing I'm going to point out, it was extremely popular in the 70s and the golden age of bodybuilding, and I don't like to get into all this, but I know a lot of people like to hear about it. It's been said, like some of you are probably aware, that it was one of Arnold's favorite steroids to run, and there's countless stories out there that circulate about it, and his use of Primobolan, stacking it with different things, and his use. I don't like to get into all that, but I know that people like to hear about that. And if you know anything about Arnold, you know that Primo was one of his favorites. Now, let's talk about Primo for women. It's considered to be one of the best choices for women because it has low androgenic qualities and consequently results in lean gains. Women tend to want to avoid anything causing bulkiness or excess water, things of that nature. And since estrogen is going to create a soft look, steroids that aromatize can destroy the aesthetics that they're wanting to get. So one drug which creates hardness without blasting or bloating types and estrogenic buildup is Masteron. But Masteron is a pure androgen, and this can lead to masculine qualities like hair growth, tougher skin, deeper voice, and an enlargement of the clitoris. So Primo is purely anabolic in general. So these sides are kept to an absolute minimum, and if doses are kept reasonable, women generally aren't going to have a thing to worry about. Now, women usually respond very well to a dose of like 50 to 100 milligrams per week, but many people do go for the oral version, and they feel it's better at burning fat for them, and that's completely fine, but that's pure speculation and completely anecdotal. There is no evidence whatsoever that shows that to be true. Some women decide to stack it with Anabar or Winstrol, but that's not necessary at all. Primo on its own is more than enough for a woman. Now, quickly, I'm going to go back to injectable versus oral. As I said, injectable is far superior. Oral Primo results are just not very good, and this is because a large amount of the active substance, as I pointed out earlier, is going to be destroyed by the liver. It's not C17 alpha alkylated, so you got to run extremely high doses, and the results are already not so great. So I would just stick with the injectable version. Women, I would say, could go ahead and go with the oral version if they like, and it's going to work better for them. Now, it has same sort of side effects as any other steroid, but to a far lesser degree, all right? Some people feel that because Primo is so clean, there's no dosage duration or amount that's harmful, but that is not true either. One side effect that you've got to be worried about is the effect on the kidneys. It doesn't directly harm the kidneys, but because it's so anabolic, what it does is it actually keeps an enormous amount of protein or nitrogen that's recirculating throughout your body. All right. Now, that's great for your muscles, but the kidneys still have to remove the waste, and after a while, it can start to be a strain on them. So do not underestimate it, and do not think that it can't be, any harm if it's overdone. It isn't technically a side effect, but another drawback is the price. Primo is probably one of the most expensive steroids out there. All right. Now, understand that Primo is often faked. All right. Unfortunately, being that it's so expensive, a lot of times you're going to buy Equipoise or Masteron disguised as Primobolan. You have to find a trustworthy source. All right. One of my favorite brands of Primobolan is Balkan. But you've got to have a source that has real Balkan products. And I'm not here to share that kind of information. That's not what this is here for. Just understand that you got to be very careful, and you got to really, really trust who you're getting it from, because people get screwed left and right and don't actually get the true Primo experience. And that's another reason why I think some people are turned off by it. And I understand, because it is really expensive. But if you can get your hands on real Primo, to me, there's nothing better. Just remember, 400 milligrams minimum, 500 to 600 milligrams sweet spot. There's no need to go over 12 weeks, 14 weeks max. But other than that, I pretty much tried to cover every single scenario, topic, whatever fact is out there on Primobolan. So I did my very best to cover that for you. I am a Primo snob. That's why this video has gone a little longer than most, but I wanted to give you all the information, and because I love it so much, I tend to ramble on with it. But you are fully educated now. So, that being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli, signing off.